Welcome to the Practicing Drummer Podcast. My name is Craig, and in this episode, I'm bringing you a conversation I had with Colleen Clark in April of 2024. Colleen earned a Doctor of Musical Arts from the University of North Texas, and after living in New York City for many years, she's now an assistant professor of jazz at the University of South Carolina. In addition to her role at USC, Colleen has several musical projects, and the recent album with her band Alliance received a 4-star review in the prestigious Downbeat magazine. She's also the founder and artistic director of USC's Jazz Girls Day. This episode is another one that's a bit on the long side, but Colleen has so many active projects that I wanted to learn more about, and as you'll hear, she's very supportive of her collaborators and is not shy about giving thanks to everyone who has helped her along the way. I found her gratitude, passion, and goal-oriented focus to be incredibly inspiring. Let's get into it with Colleen Clark. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I think the first time your name came up as somebody to have on the podcast was when I was in Denmark talking to somebody that I met through the podcast, a drummer there, and he mentioned that I should have you on. And I think it was a few weeks ago when the Alliance album came out. I may have hit you up on Instagram, and we started chatting a little bit, and here we are.
Yep, here we are.
How's that project been for you? I know you got a great Downbeat review recently, and the album is great. Can you tell me a little bit about that project, how it came together, and let's just start there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thanks to my friend in Denmark for saying something. That's fantastic. Yeah, Alliance is such a hit. We're so happily surprised. Sherelle and I have known each other since 2012, I think. It's like long time at this point. Yeah. And we had collaborated on, different types of projects when we were both in New York. And now she's up in Chicago, and we kind of reconnected at Brevard, the Brevard Jazz Institute. Not last summer, but the summer before, because Michael Dees brought both of us to teach, and we continue to teach. And we're going there in soon, early June.
And where is that?
That's in Brevard, North Carolina.
Okay, yeah. I'm just completely unaware of the
that's
the
fine.
geography out there.
I'm also learning it because we're new here still.
Sure.
But it's. I think now we're up to like 120 students for the 2 weeks, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
We've got a lot of drummers coming through this year. I'm really excited about. This is a camp that Dees founded, but he always has the great Rodney Whitaker teaching with him.
Oh,
Sherelle, nice. Jocelyn Gould, Anthony Stanko, Greg Tardy of Elvin Jones, the last Elvin Jones group. Greg was in that group, and now he's on the road with Bill Frisell, of course. But yeah, it's we kind of reconnected at Brevard, and Sherelle had always wanted to do an all-female ensemble, and I have one that is different because it's exploring the combination of Mexican music and jazz. So that's my Cici and the Adelitas group, which is a whole other thing. But yeah. We had started to talk about it, and we're like, let's try to do it. Let's try to do it and kind of see what happens. So she set up a week at the Jazz Showcase. So we kind of used that to make sure that we got all of our ducks in a row, like regarding tunes and getting comfy playing with each other.
And what was the tune selection like? And you'll have to forgive me. Did anybody in the group write for this album? I think you did write at least one tune, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've got two on there.
Okay.
Carmani Edwards, the bass player, she wrote a killing tune called Linger, and then she does a great arrangement of Maiden Voyage. It's super happening.
Yeah, that arrangement is great.
Yeah, that's Carmani. She killed it. Yeah. And then Hannah wrote this great tune, Something New. And it's harmonically fun for the cats, and it's fun for us because it kind of cooks a little bit. And then we have a mixture of standards, like Wingspan, for the grace of, Maiden Voyage, of course. And so it was like the feedback that we're receiving is that it's a great balance of the understanding of jazz history and new. Right. So we're just super excited that people are digging it. Yeah. The Downbeat thing was pretty funny how we found out. We were doing a conference together in DC with Dee's, and Sherelle's husband, Richard Johnson, the great piano player, he won a grant to put this conference together. And so Sherelle and I were sitting on a panel together, and I got the email that's like, oh, Downbeat, the latest edition is out. And I knew that the record label had said that we were going to get a review, but we didn't know anything about it. So I was like, let me just pull this up real quick. And then I was like, whoa, I was like, I kind of smacked her on the leg. I'm like, look. And so we did a very quiet high five, a respectful high five, because there were other things going on. But yeah, and then we were just kind of just so excited. We're also really excited about this because we're kind of the older people on the record. Kermani is under 30, as is Hannah, as is Kellen Hannes. So that's part of the whole point of this, is to really make sure people know that Sherelle and I are deeply invested in mentorship and teaching. And so we're like, we got to get some young cats. And imagine if that's the first record you're on, you got 4 stars from Downbeat, which means you're in the running for album of the year with Downbeat. Like it's one of these things that it's just like a no-brainer of how we work in the jazz world, obviously, regarding mentorship. And also Sherelle and I are at a point in our careers where we're able to do that. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. It's really, really exciting. We can't wait we're actually going to be doing a couple nights at Smalls in May, and then we'll do an entire week again at the Jazz Showcase in July. So that'll be great. Cool. As like CD release. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So where are all the members in this group located? You said that
good question.
One's in Chicago.
That's right. Yeah. Sherelle and Kermani are in Chicago. Hannah is at school at Peabody. Under the direction of Sean Jones, of course. So she's in Baltimore, but she's actually from California. So she's kind of just on tour already as a youngster, which is great. Kellen is based in New York. Also, she's also in school. And so we're kind of all over the place, but Sherelle and I have made it work where it just makes sense for us to do gigs in certain areas. New York is still kind of my family's home too. So it's easy for us to get the cats there. And then Chicago, having Sherelle and Kermani based there, is pretty easy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in New York?
I'm from Connecticut, but I've lived in New York State since 2005.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was just in Connecticut for, I think, the first time last year. And we have a friend that during the pandemic moved out of the city and bought a place in Connecticut. And so I've course did the required trip to New Haven to try
Pepe's.
Yes, to try Pepe's and Sally's. There you go. Yeah. Both great.
I mean, both great, but Pepe's is better. But that's my take on it.
Did you grow up near New Haven then?
No, but my dad was always taking us to New York or Boston. So my sister and I are very familiar with both cities since we were kids. And so I always knew that I was going to live in New York City and be a jazz musician since I was little. I just kind of had that in my head. And so, the train station, though, we were in southeastern Connecticut. So we'd have to drive to New Haven for the train station to hop into New York. And so it was always a good stop. And now Pepe's is like expanded. So they've got locations kind of everywhere, which is good and bad. But like anyone listening, you got to go to the real one. The first one, which is in New Haven, very close to Yale, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and the whole thing about it is like Pepe's and Sally's are in competition with each other. Basically, if you can't get into Pepe's, people tend to resort to go to Sally's. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think we even went to a Pepe's location in Fairfield, and I was surprised. I was surprised that they have outposts. So
yeah, they got one in like Manchester, which is closer to where my family's at. So we were there like. The cats and I brought some USC cats up to do Jazz Girls Day in Connecticut, and so we went to the one in Manchester because it was closer to the area that we were in. So
cool.
But yeah, I'm from Connecticut. but like I said, I had been living in New York since 2005 because I did my undergraduate at Ithaca College in upstate New York.
Oh, yeah.
And then I kind of gradually migrated down, did the master's with John Riley at SUNY Purchase, and then moved into the city. And then while I was doing my doctorate, we still had our place in New York. So I was actually kind of commuting back and forth.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Because my significant other did not want to live in Denton, Texas. And, I don't blame her. So
Yeah. How long did you live in the city?
We were there since 2012 until we made it to May of 2020. And then we moved up to the beach in Connecticut, actually, during COVID. And then I got the job I was hired in this. We announced it, I guess, in the spring of 21. And then we moved here in July 21. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just watching a faculty recital that you did at USC in, I think, 2022. Cool. So that must have been right after you moved there.
That's right. And I was brand new. Mm-hmm. Well, still brand new.
Yeah, and one thing that was really cool, I was just kind of like skipping around the video, and I landed on one of your drum solos. And what I really appreciated was I could hear the tune, even though I didn't hear anything other than your drum. So it was Think of One. So, it's a very familiar melody, of course. And you took a nice solo on that. So
thanks, man.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's go back a little bit. There's so much I want to hit on because you have so many great projects. You mentioned Jazz Girls Day. You mentioned John Riley. I want to talk about that. North Texas, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But can we... Okay, well... Let's do this before we start, because I'm going to forget this.
Okay.
The photo on your website that is you with all the drums around.
Yeah.
I used to do some photography professionally, and so I'm always curious about musician photos. Where was that taken?
That's so cool that you even noticed that room. So that was a really one-of-a-kind room in the second floor of what was Steve Maxwell's vintage and custom drum shop in Times Square.
Oh, okay, yep.
And so Steve had he had like a, like the second floor was kind of like a private showroom of only Gretsch and Craviotto. And so that is from the Gretsch room. And so,
oh, nice. Okay.
I mean, they had all the super duper high end stuff. And now I'm so happy to say that I'm a Gretsch artist. After playing Gretsch my whole life, that we just made that official.
Oh, wonderful.
In January. So that was really cool for me. But yeah, that was there. It's the old Steve Maxwell's before they moved closer to Madison Square Garden. And Steve was like, "Oh, just use the space, like have a shoot." I'm like, "Okay." So I can't stop using those photos because there was no other room like that in the world, Yeah.
So, yeah, it's super cool. I went to his location outside of Chicago.
Oh, it's cool, right? I was just there too. Yeah.
So impressive. They have so much cool stuff there.
I know. I was like, that was the week I was playing the showcase. I'm like, "Steve, I'm coming out to Chicago. Can I come to the Chicagoland store?" And he's like, "Colleen, of course." He was so sweet. And he toured me around for like 2 hours and showed me all the really inside stuff. And then I couldn't leave without a cymbal. He's like, "I got something for you." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Check this out." I was like, "Oh, thank you." I got a 60s pretty thin A with the original rivets.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I wish it's in my studio at school, actually. But I was like, that was very sweet of him. And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And then I played it on the showcase. Actually, I played it on the record. It's my left side cymbal.
Cool.
I just remember that. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I'm a rivet person. Like, I'm a rivet queen. The more it rattles, the better for me. So
what's your main ride?
It's a Renaissance, 22-inch Renaissance with 10 holes in it, and extra clusters. So like extra hammered clusters around three extra clusters. And then it was funny because we had Zildjian come in, feels like a year ago, but it was last week. And we did this whole, I'm not sure if I can say this, but we did something special with Zildjian. I should ask them. But anyway, I won't say exactly what it was, but the guys came and we were filming something. And it was so funny because they were like, "Oh my God, Colleen, this is so specific." I'm like, "Yeah." So when I was asking for cymbals for PASIC, because I did a clinic at PASIC this year, like, my guys were like, okay, what are you comfortable with? Or just tell me your setup. And so I did. And it's very specific. And they're like, yeah, we don't have any of that. I'm like, I know, they're all prototypes. Can you give me something that's similar? And they did. They hooked me up with really great stuff, of course. But yeah, that's my main right. I've got a great 22-inch. It was like a Constantinople flat with 2 holes in it, which they only made for Maxwell's, I think. They only made like a small number of them.
Okay.
And so when I got my job, actually, one of my mentors from North Texas, he had bought that from my old boss at Steve's, Jess Birch, who's now opened an amazing, he bought the New York store. And so it's called Good Hands Drum
Yes,
Shop.
yeah, absolutely. Jess is great.
Jess is the best. So my mentor bought it from Jess, who also, he gave Jess some lessons when he was little, because they're both from Ohio. Really funny. Kind of just
cool.
like full circled. And we didn't really realize it until much later. But his name's Steve Barnes, incredible drummer, like LA studio drummer, and retired in Denton because his wife is the head of vocal jazz at North Texas, actually, Jennifer Barnes.
Cool.
Yeah. And so Steve was like, Cece, do you like this cymbal? I was like in his home studio because I was on a layover. I was going somewhere. I'm like, let's get lunch. He's like, check this out. I'm like, cool. I was like, oh, wow, this is really great. Feels so good. He's like, well, congratulations. It's yours. I'm like, what? He's like, take it. I'm not going to use it. And this is my gift for you getting a job, which was so cute.
Oh, that's great. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I use that a lot, actually, especially if I'm doing like piano trio stuff. And then my left side, this is kind of cool. Actually, this is through the shop too. Francisco Mela, of course, amazing drummer, came through and he was playing with McCoy Tyner for this whole period of time right before McCoy died. And he brought in this, like it was definitely some kind of con, but it was lathed and you can bend it. You can totally just, but it's a 22 as well. I love big cymbals too. And he put three holes in it and it's kind of wild, but when I tighten the felt down onto it, it actually has a vibe because it's also one of these small bell cymbals too. So it's kind of with those 3, I've got a lot of variety of sounds. And then because I'm a Zildjian artist too, I was conducting the Massachusetts Eastern Region Jazz Band, which is so cute in January. And it was it was in Newton. And so it was really close to the Zildjian factory. So Craigie was like, come for a tour. And so I did. And then they brought me into the artist vault. And then I got some other stuff that's like super duper fun to play on. And one of my other groups headlined the Charleston Jazz Festival last night, and I was using the new stuff, and it was cool to hear it in that scenario because it's my original music, but it's got like elements of pop, backbeat, that kind of stuff, but also swings and New Orleans, and so like using the new tools.
Is that Southern Pines?
That's right, yeah.
Right,
yep.
Okay.
And then tomorrow is Jazz Girls Day back in with Charleston Jazz, which is cool.
Well, since we're on the topic, because I'm not going to forget to ask you how you got into the drums and blah, blah, blah.
Fair. Yeah, easy.
Can you tell me more about the Southern Pines project and your writing process and, a little bit about how that group came together? Because it's been really cool discovering more about you as I've been researching the last couple of weeks, because I basically knew your Instagram and that you are an assistant professor of jazz at University of South Carolina.
Yeah.
South Carolina.
Then I'm a big dork. Good.
And so I was really surprised, not too surprised, but I was surprised to hear you playing more stuff with pocket, more groove oriented music. So can you talk a little bit about Southern Pines and?
Yeah, I would love that. So I got we have Columbia, South Carolina is super happening. And we have a real part of why it's happening is we have a great art scene as well. And the Columbia Museum of Art commissioned me to create, they commissioned me to compose for art with art in mind. And so I had chosen a piece of artwork that I was kind of reflecting on. And they had asked me because you're doing Jazz Girls Day, could maybe do you think the ensemble could be female or majority female? I'm like, oh, totally. I love that. And so kind of through that process, what ended up happening is I was looking for a female bass player, honestly. And so I reached out to one of my buddies, who I did the doctorate with at North Texas, Greg Satterthwaite. He's an incredible pianist. He's at the University of Georgia now. So it was cool that we graduated together and then we end up 3 hours away from each other, like with jobs immediately. It was like really special. And I'm like, Greg, like, do you have any good suggestions from like the ATL area? Because I just didn't really know any in South Carolina. He's like, oh my God, you got to check out Tasia Veal. And I was like, okay. So I checked her out. She's on tour with Lil Yachty. She just played Coachella. Last year, before we debuted this band, she was on Saturday Night Live the week before. She's going back she came in last night to Charleston, and then she's flying back to California today to go do another show with Lil Yachty on Sunday. So like, she's got this like super pocket pop thing, but also last night, like in the middle of the set, we always do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? And because it's kind of the theme, and I'll talk about that in a second, of like having this realization that South Carolina is our home now, you know, which is very different because we've always been in New York. And so so last night we were like, the first time we played the gig, I had her play upright, and my buddy was like, she's killing on upright, but you gotta hear her play electric. Like, and I've seen all these videos. I'm like, yeah, duh. Right. So first of all, she takes out the bass, and it's so cool. It's got glow in the dark green strings. So it's already got like a vibe, the bass. And I'm like, oh, is this your new bass? This company just sent it to her last week because they want her to play it with Lil Yachty, you know, the whole thing. So anyway, so she's playing and we're doing, do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? Like, do, 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 right? Boo, do, 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 do. So, and she's like, boom, boom, boom. And on the ride home, like Matt, who's my boss at work, Guggenheim winning composer and trumpeter, and Lauren, my other colleague at work, amazing saxophone player and singer. Like we were nerding out by the fact that Tasia made that electric bass sound exactly like an upright. It was insane. Like just the level of this woman and she's only one of the incredible members of the band, right? And so the museum was like, Colleen, can you write some music about the South or whatever? So what I ended up doing is I wrote this multi-movement work that's entitled Carolina. And really all it is, it's like each movement is a different number. And actually, the main kind of the toe tapper is on the Alliance record with us playing it, you know, me and Sherelle playing it. But it was really written for this group with two-time Grammy Award-winning vocalist Kiana Parler singing it. And so what I did is I interweaved themes throughout all the movements. And I this is the first time I'd ever written lyrics too. So that was kind of scary. That was kind of scary because Kiana's like a genius. And I was like, are these jive? And she's like, no. And it's like, it's experiential. It's how my family and I have really adjusted and come to love this place and this area in the United States. We have like huge, like really tall pine trees that I'd never seen before. Not really, you know?
Yeah, right.
We've got these beautiful forests that you can walk through and you look up and it's just trees forever and there's birds and like the importance of church here and how that influences life musically too. Like there's so many amazing church musicians and gospel musicians that are in this area, the Southeast, that enriches us and our students. And so kind of all that intermingled, I created this thing, which I didn't know if it would work. And we did that first gig and I was like, whoa. And everyone in the band, again, they're all killers. They're like, Colleen, this is really like super bad. And then last night too, because it was the second time we had done it and it was the Charleston Jazz Festival, like packed house, right? And we just went in and we really played and it was just such a cool experience. And the cats were like, we gotta record this. So I'm trying to figure out where to, how to fundraise for that, you know, so the cats are taken care of and I feel good about what I can provide for them. And cause that's why I think a lot of us have to kind of wait to do projects because we want to take care of our musicians, right? And make sure that they're not being, neglected, right? And so, but yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then if people don't know the band Ranky Tanky, they're a South Carolina band that is like influenced by blues, jazz, and Gullah music. And so Gullah is very specific to this region because of the barrier islands, right? And the slave trade. So the Gullah community, Gullah Geechee community is very small, but very vibrant here in South Carolina. And Kiana is part of that community. And she's the singer of this band, Ranky Tanky. They just won their second Grammy Award for Best Regional Roots Album. And they're just unbelievable. And actually, Lisa Fisher is now on tour with them as well. And of course, she was the backup singer for the Rolling Stones. And she's an incredible singer in her own right, obviously. But it's like this area has so much to offer. And I think my perception, it's also getting older. This happens as well. But, we've been New Yorkers our whole lives or the majority of our lives. And it's just interesting to be here and really take in all of the talent and the styles of music that are being played and performed. And, I tell our students all the time, it's like, New York isn't the only place where there's good music. Now, if you had asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have said, yes, it is, because that's me being young and not as thoughtful and less experienced. Mm-hmm. But, we're New Yorkers. We think we know everything, and that's cool. We know a lot of things. We're around a lot of cultures. We're around a lot of people. But, at the same time, it's like, well, cats don't know until they know. And so moving here has also really opened up our mind about just like life and people and reminded us that like the only thing that's important in life is to be nice to people. And
right.
If anyone runs through here or goes through ATL or, the Southeast is really special for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk more specifically about your writing process for the group? I'm curious, like if you play other instruments. I'm assuming that you do. What is your process when you actually write the tunes and then chart them and get the band together for rehearsal? And how do you work that out?
Well, I play piano, not in public. Thankfully I've got ears that I can trust as well. And so a lot of the times, I think a lot of drummers do this. We write the melody first and then harmonize. Yeah. So that's kind of my process. Although on this though, there are a couple of movements where I just liked a certain chord progression and then I wrote stuff on top of it. So it can work either way really. And then then basically what I do that by hand, kind of sketch stuff out. Okay. And then I hop into Sibelius and furiously and kind of neurotically try to make the cleanest looking parts. I tell my students that it's not about your tune, it's about how good your parts are, so cats can read it on the first try, right? And it's funny that you said, like, brought up the rehearsal. So yesterday we had the rehearsal. I had slotted out 2 hours or whatever. We were done in 45 minutes. And like afterwards, I was asking Lauren and Matt, I'm like, cats, like, were you vibing me? You didn't say anything. And they're like, no, that was just the easiest rehearsal ever. I'm like, cool. I'm like, great. It helped that we had already played it, but it was a year later, and so I had written some notes down and done the band leader thing, but I try to make the parts as easy as possible so that, again, if people were sitting down and sight reading, that they could have a better shot at being successful. When it comes to arranging, I always tell my students too, just rely on the years of listening that you've done, and that's going to come out in your writing, right? So I've got years of listening to big band music, for example. Right. I've got years of listening to Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I got years of listening to, right? So we have our kind of go-tos, and then it'll shine through. And exactly what I say when cats are practicing, I'm like, how you sound on the bandstand is a direct reflection of what you're actually practicing. So if you're never playing quiet on the bandstand, it's because you're never practicing it. They're like, ooh, yeah, like that kind of thing. So that's kind of my process.
Okay, cool.
A lot of the times it's like I need the deadline, like a lot of us. I'm excited for summer because I'm going to write a bunch of new arrangements for the Adelitas because we're really, I think we're going to be able to get into the studio at the end of this year, which is great. And so I've got got 5 arrangements that I'm like really happy with. And then I've got,
oh, great.
I need to do 2 new ones and then redo one of them, just kind of freshen it up a little bit. But I love having time to write. I'm one of these cats that is like, okay, I'll get it done if I have to, but I'm really productive when I don't have anything on my schedule, honestly. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that leads directly into something I wanted to ask you about, because you have so many projects and you're busy and you stay busy, you playing and teaching. How do you balance all of this and kind of do the focus shifting? You were also in school for a very long time because you went all the way through.
Yes, sir, I was.
Because you went through getting your doctorate at North Texas State. So I'm assuming that being in academia so long, kind of trains you to like, okay, I have this to do now, this to do later, and I need to practice. But how are you managing that now when you're sort of on the other side, working, playing, and doing all of this? Like, daily routines or things you think about outside of music that help you keep kind of a focus and an energy for all of this stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I guess I've never really thought about it. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. I'm just kind of like, I've got this on the calendar and I've got to do it. What keeps me focused? My family. I like to run. And I tell my students, exercise is always going to help. Doesn't matter what kind of exercise.
Right.
But for example, when I was getting ready for the Seth gig, I had a goal of being able to run consecutively for at least 45 to 60 minutes, because I knew that's the type of mental focus, the longevity of the show would take from me. And part of the stress of that show was the unknown. I didn't know anything. All I knew was that Eric was like, you gotta look up and play on the one. And I'm like, okay,
and just to clarify for folks that didn't catch it, you said the Seth gig, and you sat in with the Seth Meyers HG band for at least a few nights, right?
Yeah, it was a week. Yep.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. And that's all on streaming. I went and watched all those on Peacock last week. Super cool. It was very cool seeing you do that. So
thank you.
It's really interesting to hear how you prepared for that with a goal of running and mental focus.
And that's kind of that's what I tell my students. I'm like, you do have to have a routine. Like if I know that I'm like, for example, if I'm going to make another record with D's, it's really funny actually. About 2 months before I get into a strict running regimen, to make sure that I have a serious focus for him too, because I got to be able to keep up with him because he's the best trombone player on the planet. Argue with me, go ahead. I'll bring it. I'm down, but I got to be able to, make sure that he feels that I'm supporting him. Right. And so that the running definitely helps. I do have, I'm an avid, color coding calendar person.
Oh,
so
cool.
I mean, my calendar, and I also run the calendar for USC Jazz Studies. Like our calendars are up to date by the minute. And that includes like when I'm out of town, when Matt's out of town, like when Lauren has to do an outreach, all that kind of stuff. We're just like hyper organized. And so, at the end of the day, successful people know that there's no bar that you reach and then you're done, right? That's
right. Yeah.
It's always moving, right? It's always moving up. It's always moving up. And so kind of this mentality of longevity and health and however you need to maintain it. Try to eat really well as well. And just kind of having that focus and always remembering that what we do is really fun.
Right.
And so if you're we were actually talking about this last night, like in the drive back from Charleston, we're like, we've all met some of our jazz heroes and been disappointed, right? Like that's a reality because maybe they were grumpy or they weren't very nice or any of that. And it's like, if you can't remember what it feels like to be that kid and be like, oh my God, I got to meet so-and-so, right? And have that moment of like, I'm so nervous. I don't know if I can talk to them. And then you do, and it's incredible. That changes their life. And
absolutely,
it can be the opposite though, too. Remember that being that little kid, oh my God, I want to meet so-and-so. Here I go. I'm going to take all this courage and try to talk to them, even just to say thank you. And they're horrible. That sticks with you longer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had one of those experiences, and I won't mention any names here, but man, it still sticks with me 30 years later.
Yes. I've had a lot of them. And it's like, what a drag, You're like, I know, I can sing all your solos. And you just, what? So I always have that in my mind. It's like, if a person is trying to talk to you and thank you for what you're doing, please be nice. And also, hopefully that's a reminder of we get to do this. That's why we're put on the planet. That's our calling, right? It's like, we are going to play music so people can have an experience that removes them from the junk they have to deal with every day, right? This happened last night. I had this woman. She said she was from she was from Saratoga Springs, really beautiful place in upstate New York, right? Oh, I'm just visiting my son. He goes to somewhere, College of Charleston, and that, not the last piece, but the second to last piece, that took me somewhere. I was crying, and I don't know why, but it just like took me somewhere, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry I made you cry. But I'm actually happy that what we were doing took you somewhere, right? Yeah. And so that's always my thing. It's like you have to be sincere, because that's the worst too, when people are just being fake. Right? You got to be sincere. You got to be nice. And these are really all our morals that we host here at school too. All of our students do outreach with us. They run our jazz festival with us. They do Jazz Girls Day with us, so that we can remind them that it's not about them. It's about these kids that are having these experiences, and they see themselves in their shoes at some point, right? And so we're hoping that through these activities, that when these cats graduate and they go into their communities, either as a band director or a player or whatever it is, that they're good people, Well,
yeah, and that it leads to more mentorship, which you touched on earlier. That is such a big part of this music and all music, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been so lucky with my mentors. I really have. I've never had a direct teacher that's been female. So I mean, I'm also of the thought that a mentor can be anyone, right? I'm just super stoked that I can be a female mentor for young female musicians. Maybe this is a changeover from basically my generation to the next, right? And so, but one of my great mentors is John Riley. I know you had mentioned him earlier.
Yes.
And John, drummer for the Village Vanguard Jazz Orchestra every Monday night. You can see him there. John, here's the thing. He'd be at Purchase one day a week. Because I think everyone but the director is adjunct. That's kind of the vibe in New York. It's just like you're adjunct to a few places at the same time or whatever. And he'd be there on Wednesdays from whatever. It was like 9 to 7, something like that. And any moment he had that like in between lessons or just to himself, he was practicing. And that is like, I never forget that. Because it's like, he's already super bad, right? And it's like this idea of like, well, the journey, the practicing and the learning journey never ends. That's what's so special about what we do. It's like we're athletes, especially drummers. We're athletes in a sense, right? But think about it. Athletes have to retire because the body wears out. I mean, Brady's an exception. Diana Taurasi's an exception. That they are so old for athletes, right? I mean, 42 is not old, people, but Diana's about to do what, the 6th Olympics? That's insane, right? I mean, she's unbelievable. Diana Taurasi will go down in history as, if you're going to choose one, and so, but their bodies max out, right? And so we have, as long as we're healthy with our habits, we have that luck of longevity. And so, and also John's a super healthy cat. He's triathlete. We used to talk about running a lot, and also helping your mental fortitude and focus. John's cool too. Like, I won't talk to him for maybe 2 years, and then I'll go to a gig and it's like we saw each other yesterday.
Oh yeah, he's a great person. I've talked to him just a couple of times, and I took one lesson with him. I was going to be in New York a few years ago, and I just emailed him and hit him up to see if I could do a lesson up at the school. And he said, well, we're out of session, but I could come into the city. And only later did I find out that was actually his birthday. And he still came in to do one lesson for me because I asked, and I'll never forget that. It was wonderful.
Well, and John too, and I always say this too, like, I remember being in lessons and he'll be like, oh, hold on 1 second, I got to take this phone call. And if it was a student, he'd always pick it up.
Wow.
And so, like, every time I've called him, which is not very often, maybe less than 10 times, he's always picked it up and let me talk. Always made sure it wasn't an emergency, number one. Like, are you okay? And then, oh, I just want to tell you this real quick thing. Okay, no problem. Go ahead. And it's always, Colleen, love to hear your voice, but I'm actually in a lesson right now. And I'm like, okay, yep, I know. But a cat like that always picks up the phone. That's amazing. If you think about, like, he's probably got thousands of students at this point.
Oh, yes.
It's got to be, right? And so, of course, I learned a lot from him as a drummer, but I also learned a lot from him as a person.
So when you got to him and started studying with him, kind of where were you in your playing journey? Were you confident in your playing at all? Or and kind of where did you land on what he thought you needed to work on, and what was your journey like with him?
Yeah, it was great because he was he's a teacher's teacher. He doesn't care where you're at. He'll meet you where you're at. He's not one of these cats, well, you can't swing, so I'm not going to invest in you.
Yes.
And so I had just come from him after earning a bachelor's of music in percussion performance. So I was playing classical percussion with Gordon Stout, who is also my mentor to this day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And music education. So I did the double degree at Ithaca College. And so my focus was, now, Gordon always knew I was going to be a drummer, but Gordon taught me how to be a musician. And if people don't know Gordon Stout, he really revolutionized. He made the marimba famous. His class at Eastman in the 70s, they put the marimba on the map. And people probably know, like, his big hit, the Two Mexican Dances. It's still used in marimba competitions to this day. He's still an active player and clinician. Another guy he always picks up when I call, and we talk often, but he's like a father figure to me, just a special cat.
Oh, cool. I'll find some, or maybe if you have a video or something you can share with me later, I'll put it in the show notes so folks can check it out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's such a special cat. So I had just come from, I played in the big band a little bit at Ithaca College. I played in the big band, but it wasn't, I was like learning Bach on the marimba. I was playing timpani excerpts. I was doing that, which is cool. But yeah, I had just kind of kept up my own practicing. John met me where I was at. He told me what I needed to do. And then the second year, he asked me what I wanted. And so what I would do is I'd have him play for the lesson, and I would transcribe the grooves he was playing. And then I'd bring him for the next week. I'm like, teach me new grooves, teach me that kind of stuff. And it helped me become a transcriber, And so that was super cool. And of course we worked out of the books too, but he was also very much like, what do you want to do? Let me help you get better at what you want to do. I had a band at that time. He actually was very encouraging about that. He's like, you should write music. And so that's really when I started to write music was because of him. Now, when I went to North Texas, I was with Ed So for a year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I had known Ed since, I met him when I was 12. I went to the North Texas jazz camps when I was really little.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. And so, but I was too little to like stay in the dorms. So my dad brought me down and we got like a hotel. We stayed in a hotel and then he drove me in. And so my dad had known Ed. My dad was a booking agent in Hartford when Hartford was a little bit more happening back in the day. And so he knew Ed and he knew Neil Slater and all the cats that ended up going down to North Texas. And so, yeah, Ed was cool. He taught me how to hold the brushes. I remember that first brush lesson vividly. And I remember the room it was in. So it was kind of weird, like going to school there 20 years later.
And that was when you were 12, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And then I went back a second year and he was so great with me. Like he was so great. He didn't treat me any differently.
And do you remember after that brush lesson, kind of going back home, and how did you practice the brushes? Were you playing along with records or working on patterns, or probably all of the above? But
yeah, it was kind of all the above. But his whole thing was like, pretend that you're weighting water, and that's the weight that you should feel when you're in the resistance you should feel when you're playing the brushes. It was such a genius thing, and I remember it as a kid. And he still uses that to this day. And kind of having that resistance, and it's like that's how it should feel, okay? And then make that circular motion. And then pick up the brushes. You're going to do the same thing in the air. And then you're going to slowly go down to the snare drum. It's like, I still use that with my students all the time. Yeah. And so just kind of getting that sound, that full brush sound and swish. And so, yeah, when I was looking for, programs for the doctorate, there were really only two that jumped out at me that also had fellowship money. And that was the University of Miami and the University of North Texas. And so I wrote Ed, I was like, hey, like, I'm thinking about this. And we had kept in touch this whole time. I saw him at PASIX. I saw him at, I'd always say, hi, just, again, me walking up to him. Hi, I don't know if you remember me, but we met and he was always a gentleman. Colleen, so nice to see you. How's it going? I sent him when I released my debut record, I sent it to him and he wrote a review for me.
Wow.
And he didn't even really know me, and Ed doesn't do that. Like Ed's like he's removed when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so, so that was like, when I wrote him, I was like, well, let's see what he said. He's like, hey, Colleen, great to hear from you. I'm all for it, but just so you know, I'm going to retire in 1 year. Now, that doesn't mean I won't be here for you afterwards. Like I'm still going to be in town, but I wanted to be upfront with you about this, which again, class act, right? It's like, okay, cool. Good to know. I had the audition. He was so cool. Like I didn't bring cymbals. He's like, I got you. Don't worry about it. He carried the cymbal bag. I was like, Ed, that's so like, he was just being real cool,
Yes.
And then I met at the time, the chair of jazz studies, a man named John Murphy, who was an ethnomusicologist, but he got a degree in, in theory. He was a tenor player. Like he'd gone to North Texas. Like he was jack of all trades. Like, probably one of the smartest people I will ever meet in my life. And he, for the doctorate, we did like an interview too. So it wasn't just me playing. It was like I had to play. And then John grilled me on a lot of stuff, which I didn't really know that was going to happen. But I was like, okay, cool. Whatever.
Like what kind of stuff? Music questions?
Yeah.
Like repertoire questions or technical questions?
It was more like he was trying to get a feel of my understanding of jazz history.
Okay.
And he was trying to see my potential as a candidate, as a research person too.
Right.
And also just kind of see if I was up for the task. I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And I always say I went to North Texas for Ed, but I stayed because of John.
And you did some research there too. That's where you did the jazz ride cymbal pattern research. Is that right?
Yeah, evolution of the pattern. Mm-hmm.
Right, and everybody listening should go over to the Drum History podcast after this and check out your episode there with Bart.
Yeah, we really Bart and I kind of got into that, which was cool. I didn't know I would love research as much as I do. And it was really because of John's influence. He put faith in me when I don't know. I needed it, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
Researching was not necessarily, I had never done that before. In my degrees prior, I maybe wrote one paper, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then it just like, I got this bug and I got really obsessed with the topic as well. And the topic was kind of pitched to me, and not in this exact way, but by the cat that took Ed's job, which was Quincy Davis.
Oh,
And so,
cool.
and so, I think, John just like lit this research fire under me, you know what I mean? And maybe the thing with Zildjian is something to do with that. So,
Oh, sure.
cats will be able to see this soon. So,
Okay.
but yeah, the North Texas thing, it was also cool because it was like having a full-time job.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's the rigor of the fellowship. And so I had the top lab band that a student could run. They gave that to me, which was cool.
Oh, wow.
And that's really my forte, is like being in front of a band. At the time, they weren't really playing anything other than the stereotypical North Texas stuff. So I was like, cats, you're going to learn all that from all the other cats. Let's get you some early jazz. So what I did is every gig they played I tried to get pre-1940 set and then post, so that
nice.
so they could feel the swing and how it evolved, right?
Yeah, and for the audience too, it can get that experience.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the sets, we did 4 of the Chick Webb, Ella Fitzgerald arrangements, and they learned them all by ear and played them all memorized.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Those cats were so killing, and they bought in. And that's the hardest thing, especially when you're not technically a faculty member, right? It's like, are they going to go for this? And they did. And actually, some of those students are still in touch with me. Some of them are just so adamant about helping Jazz Girls Day that we hosted one in Ohio, and 2 of them were there. And, those are the kinds of scenarios where you're like, shoot, I'm proud of that. That's really something. A lot of those cats had never had a female band director. Like that's,
oh, wow.
That's a thing. And I had never really thought about that stuff. I don't tend to think about that, but I was like, oh geez, this is troubling. So,
right.
But part of the, and I will say, I it's a testament to the rigor at North Texas, that when I had my interview here at USC, it was like a 14-hour endeavor. I was not tired afterwards, because the comprehensive exams at North Texas was 9 hours of writing.
Oh my goodness.
And then you had to defend your writing and then do a separate dissertation defense, And so I was like, again, in that athletic mode when I was prepping for those comps, that I just got into that overdrive for this. And I was like, bring it, And so my first meeting was with the dean here, 8:30 in the morning. Eggs in the hotel, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then I get out of the hotel or the elevator at the hotel, and I thought to myself, I have an idea. Now, this was not like a properly vetted idea with my smarter half, but I was like, I'm just gonna try it. And I said to the dean, I said, hey, so great meeting you. I'm so happy to be here. And we get to talking, and I said, Taylor, here's the thing. You hire me, I will be your Dawn Staley for the School of Music. And of course, Dawn Staley is the coach of the national championship women's basketball team from this year. Now the 3rd time, coach of the year, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've been on this trajectory of like, I'm really trying to be that person for our college at the University of South Carolina. And the band director for the Carolina bands that is with Dawn a lot, that Quintus Wright, and we were texting when he was at the national championship, because the bands play all the way through.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, hey man, I'm so proud of you. You represent us so well. We're very supportive here. And he's like, nah, I'm proud of you. You doing the thing. And I was like, I'm trying, man. He's like, no, you're doing what you said you were gonna do. You are becoming our Dawn Staley for the School of Music. And so I just kind of put that out there, and I'm happy to say that with the work that we're doing with Jazz Girls Day, it's helping that become a reality. right?
Can you talk a little bit more about Jazz Girls Day since we're here? I want to hear more about the origins and your involvement and
So one of the graduates from North Texas, her name's Amanda Eckery, great vocalist. She's up at the new school now. I think she's in some kind of admin position at this point, but she's from El Paso. And she had done some research, and it really bothered her that a really low number of girls were getting into the all-state jazz band in Texas. So she created this thing called El Paso Jazz Girls, which is really an after-school program that's meant to help girls learn their all-state music and just become better musicians and to create a community, right? So when I was at North Texas, I told the cats, John, really, I was like, have you ever had a Women in Jazz Day in March? And they probably had, but not in the recent, past. And so I said, John, come on, let's do this. This is easy enough, right? We'll use my big band. We'll bring in an artist. We'll have a day of collab, do some presentations. You do your presentation, right? John was a huge advocate for Women in Jazz. And for me, he really was. I didn't have it easy, and he had my back. And so, so I said, let's bring in Nicole Zaritis, my buddy from a long time from New York. She just won Best Vocal Jazz Album, beating Esperanza and Cecile and Lionel Lewicki at the Grammy Awards. And so I said, let's bring Nicole. She'll sing with the band.
Oh, fantastic!
So that was great. But I was thinking, like, when I'm in a position where I've got more longevity and it's a job, I want to do something that actually affects real change. Like, and I mean it, not just say that phrase, because people say that, they throw that around all the time.
Right.
Oh, my thing is affected. Really? I want to see numbers. And so when I got here, I got with Matt and I'm like, man, what do you think about this? And he was like, absolutely, let's do it. And so we ran the first Jazz Girls Day at the University of South Carolina here in Columbia, our home big campus. In 2022, we had 14 girls. On the Monday before the Saturday, we had 0. And I considered canceling it because I didn't know what to do. Right.
Really?
So, yep. And so I was like, oh my God, no one's going to come.
And what are the ages of the participants?
Middle school and high school.
Okay.
Yep. Although we've had some littler ones that are really in it, and I don't care. They can come. Absolutely. And so, I got with local media and they pushed it for me, and I had 14 show up that day, which is great. This year, this is our third one this year here at USC. We had 32 girls.
Wow.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. And so, because it's been so successful here, this region of the state we call the Midlands. The state's basically broken up into three main regions. So the upstate, kind of the mountains near North Carolina. The Midlands is where we are, and then the Low Country, which feeds down into Georgia. And Charleston is technically part of the Low Country, and Greenville is part of the upstate. And so I made partnerships with Charleston Jazz and the Greenville Fine Arts Center to host regional ones. So then this has been super happening. Our numbers have skyrocketed there as well. Tomorrow, we'll be in Charleston doing the second annual Jazz Girls Day Low Country. So then I was getting calls from buddies across the country like, hey, what is this? Why is it so special? Can we do it here? And well, why it's so special? Couple things. It's actually very strictly thought out and planned. So I have a curriculum. I have educational materials. I have a schedule. And we have a Jazz Girls Day theme song with lyrics.
Oh, nice.
For example, yeah, my colleague Lauren wrote it. Super killing. We always teach them one song, one tune by ear, and then the Jazz Girls Day theme song, they read it. So there's one by ear, one reading. I do a Women in Jazz history about 30 minutes after lunch, so they can see some women in jazz, so they could try to see themselves, or just get to know some names.
Right.
And then now that I'm doing it at different locations, I'll try to cater towards at least one of those artists that I present towards someone who's from that state or that region, right? So when I was in Connecticut, I did a big portion on Nicole, right? And it was before she won the Grammy, but I'm like, this is Christian McBride is playing on this record with Nicole, who's from here.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, oh my God, it's like, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's got a format and parameters, it's called, of course, the University of South Carolina's Jazz Girls Day. It's been so successful that I'm trying to get it at least one of these in all 50 states by 2030 to try to activate communities to then take it over themselves.
Oh, nice. So up until this point, are you still traveling to each one and participating hands-on?
Yeah, I don't miss any of them. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm one of the I will always be on site for all Jazz Girls Days, unless some emergency, obviously, or something like that. But yeah, that's my baby. And so we've successfully done this in Connecticut, Ohio, Missouri, wow, I'm really blanking right now. Sorry, Craig.
Oh, that's all good. I'll link to more information.
I have a whole list. We've got Oklahoma coming up next week, Oregon the week after. So we're just kind of trying to partner with different organizations too. Oregon is going to be with PAS. So that's awesome.
Oh, cool.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they're providing, we're going to do it at Portland State, which is great. And so they're providing the space, and then I'll fly in and work with their teachers from the community and from the college. I've done it with organizations too, like Jazz Arts Group in Ohio. And that was great because that was my student from North Texas. And she called me. She's like, Colleen, I don't need you anymore. I got grants because of the first one we did. I'm like, yes, that's amazing. Right. That's
awesome.
what we want. Right.
Yeah.
Now the only problem is now I'm doing them and now cats want repeats. I'm like, so, which is cool. I love that, but there's only 52 weeks in the year,
right,
so I'm
right.
trying to handle that. But yeah, we've got, on the burner, we've got Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, California, New York, Virginia, and DC. So we're cooking. We're cooking.
That's awesome. Awesome.
But the whole thing is like, it's not one of these disorganized one-off things. It's like, no, we're coming with a purpose. When I interviewed here, they called me, they said they liked me because I was over-prepared and flexible. And that's kind of become our vibe in USC Jazz Studies, is that we're trying to model and make our students over-prepared and flexible for any situation, right? And so I think if folks give Jazz Girls Day a chance and they experience it, they're going to want more of it. So, it's been good. I mean, I'm trying to, it's only been me doing the fundraising and,
unbelievable.
Writing grants and all that stuff. So anyone listening, if you want to donate, cool, that would be awesome. Just, Craig will share my info and whatnot. Or if you know someone that would want to donate to something like this so that we can still continue to expand across the U.S., great. The University of South Carolina has been 100% supportive with internal grants and whatnot. And the School of Music too, of course, the dean has really been invested in it as it becomes one of the premier outreach programs that we're doing here. Of course, it's really helping put our school and our activity on the map. People are starting to ask, like, what is going on over there at USC Jazz Studies?
Cool,
like, I want to be part of it. We were hired 3 years ago. We had 2 majors, and now we're up to 25. And so we are growing exponentially in quality, though, not just quantity.
Well, let me switch gears here. I want to ask a little bit more about you as a player and your upbringing, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. But you mentioned a couple of times now that you have students learn by ear tunes, and then you also talked about getting into transcribing when you were with John Riley. What's your transcribing process like? Are you transcribing by ear?
Yeah. Like all of us musicians, we have great ears, right? But I'm also a visual learner. So the process of if I'm to remember this stuff for a long time, I have to write it down too. And so I also think that works other parts of the brain that are as important as just relying on your ears. I was just talking about this in my history class this morning about how Melissa Aldana actively transcribes, but she can remember all these transcriptions, Mark Turner, Sonny Rollins, and Dexter Gordon, all this stuff. She could play long transcriptions at on a dime. And
I know, it's unbelievable.
It is. She is so so unbelievable. She's incredible. And so I have to write them down for me to remember them. And then what I like to then do is examine them even more deeply so I can steal some of the things a little and make them more accessible to myself and my students, right?
Right.
So
right.
like, okay, you hear Max do this. It's actually this. Rip that from there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You hear Billy Higgins's ride cymbal is kind of straight. The left hand is swinging super hard. So practice one hand kind of playing straight swing and the other one being super triplety. These kinds of things are all coming from transcriptions that I've done, right? And ride cymbal transcriptions are as important, if not more important, than blowing transcriptions. Because if you're not swinging, ain't nobody going to listen to you.
Yeah, that's
Right?
a really interesting point. I remember specifically transcribing Louis Hayes' ride cymbal and comping on is that Kenny Drew album called Undercurrent? But it's such an important thing to do because it's really easy to focus on the solos and the trading and to just get stuck in the stereotypical jazz ride cymbal pattern. But that's just the beginning.
Exactly. And that was something that was I did a project with Ed and I analyzed 6 drummers that played with Monk. And the control was that I transcribed a couple choruses of them playing behind him soloing. Right. And so it was like Higgins, Art Blakey, Frankie Dunlop, obviously, Ben Riley, all these cats. And they all have a totally different ride cymbal pattern. So totally different.
For sure.
And the goal was that on my recital, you know, because it's school, so you got to do a recital, right?
Right.
On my recital, I was to play in the style of each different person on different tunes.
Oh,
so
cool,
it was like, but it was also like, okay, I just finished this. Now I'm going to count this off and try to play like Billy Higgins. Here we go. Now I'm going to try to play like Ben Riley. Here we go. Right. And so that was months of transcription and analysis, but truly like deep stuff. I had this system, this color-coded systematic way of trying to remember
You're all
certain
about the
language.
color coding.
I am.
Calendars,
I'm super,
transcriptions.
Yeah, I'm super visual, you know? And
yeah. I get it. I am too.
All over my practice room, it was like purple was Frankie Dunlop. Red was Art Blakey. Yellow was Higgins. And I had Roy Haynes was green, you know, so then I could still see some of them in my head right now, like the notes that I put on those color-coded pieces of paper. And you think back and you're like, that's a little mental. But at the same time, that's what I needed to do in order to really understand the task. And I went my lesson the day after and I was kind of dreading it. I'm like, oh man, you know, I had the recital the night before. I'm like, man, I screwed this up and I screwed that up. And, you know, Ed is not one to cherry coat anything at all. Right. And he said, well, what do you think about last night? And I said, well, I screwed this up and I screwed that up and I screwed this up. And he goes, I don't care. You were swinging. It was a great recital. Don't worry about those things. Right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And by the way, the transcriptions of the comping made you a better soloist. Always remember that. And I was like, okay. And that was the lesson. I was like, oh, we're okay. You know, and because it was so much effort, program notes. I did the Monk. I was in it. I did a Monk orchestra as well. And I did like what, you know, Monk at Town Hall. Hal Overton had done all those arrangements for Monk because Monk didn't trust anyone. And one of the things he did, why Little Rudy Tooty is so hip, is that he transcribed a Monk solo and then orchestrated it for the Monk at Town Hall Orchestra. I did the same thing from the same record, that Prestige Trio record with like Blakey. And I transcribed Monk piano solo from Baya and I blew it up for the orchestra.
Oh,
and
wow.
Ed was like, the orchestra was my favorite part. I was like, yeah, me too.
Oh, wow.
It was the most amount of work, but yeah, me too, man. You know, like, so anyway, yeah, just kind of stuff like that where it's like, you're in it and you're like, okay, I think I'm getting towards the goal. And then you do, and then you remember all this stuff and you're able to then share that process with your kids. And that, you know, they're going to do it their way. I always say that.
Right.
And I'm like, just because I did it this way doesn't mean you have to do it that way. But
right.
You got to transcribe. You got to listen. You got to figure out why these guys are so bad. Like, why do we keep talking about these people?
Right.
you know?
So you started playing pretty young. You said you went to North Texas to study when you were 12. When did you actually start playing? And what got you into the drums? And what were some of your first favorite albums?
Nice. So I was 4 when I started taking piano lessons.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
my dad, we had a deal. He said, not until I learn how to read music will I get you a drum set. He was a musician too.
Okay, cool.
And so when I was 8, I got my first drum set. It was a little CB piece of junk, you know.
Sure.
But it was mine. It was new and
Yes.
it was in the living room, and I was on that thing all the time. I had a tape of one side I had Sing Sing Sing, Gene Krupa.
Yeah.
And then the other side was Channel One Sweet, Buddy Rich.
Oh,
and then my
nice.
first CD was Art Blakey's The Big Beat.
Oh,
And
classic,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. And so those were kind of my
And were you,
first...
how did you, like, who gave you those tapes? Like, kids aren't generally discovering jazz music on their own.
Yeah, I had help from not only my dad, but also my middle school band and my high school band director.
Oh, cool.
And they're still in my corner to this day. Actually, I made sure that my high school band director came to a live taping of Seth Meyers because he means that much to me.
Oh,
and so,
nice. Cool.
Yeah, so that was super hip and emotional at the same time. He's retiring this year, so I was like, man, you got to come. And so my dad drove him into New York. That was super cool.
Oh,
but,
awesome.
Yeah, so I was also around good music. My dad does have great taste. I mean, I didn't know I was listening to good stuff, but I was exposed to Steely Dan, the Eagles, that kind of generation, which has phenomenal drummers as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we're talking we're talking Gad, we're talking Garibaldi, all that, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And so I kind of, I think the Blood, Sweat, and Tears horn section, they're all North Texas guys, right? Aren't they all 1 o'clockers? I don't remember, but I think
that
it is.
I don't know. Yeah.
And so, or like the Arrangers, I can't remember, but there's some kind of connection there. So yeah, I was really, lucky to have that kind of steering me. My dad took me to see, we had a really cute little drum shop in Manchester, Connecticut. And that was the first time I've ever seen a female drummer on a poster. And of course that was Sheila E. And then
sure.
I went to her master class, it was her and her dad. And that was like, I think I was in 6th grade. I was pretty little, but that was a really big deal for him to do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who's Sheila E.? And he's like, Colleen, she's the queen of percussion. And he schooled me on it. And then I just had the incredible opportunity to meet her in person only a couple of weeks ago. And I here's an example. She was so amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And now that little 6th grader could have been crushed in that moment. No, she was amazing. It's so nice to meet you, Colleen. And I told her that, and she kind of teared up a little bit. And I was like, if I wasn't exposed to that, maybe, I don't know. You never know, right?
Yeah.
And then part of that series too was Bernard Purdy and Joe Morello. So that was super sick.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was studying at the time with Alexander Lepak, who was the timpanist for the Hartford Symphony for 50 years, but he was also a swinging big band drummer. And so he was friends with Joe and Louis Bellson. And actually, like, the story goes that he had gotten the call from Duke Ellington before Louis Bellson did. And the problem was that, like, Mr. Lepak and Louis Bellson were like best friends. And Louis Bellson was about to have a new baby, and he was like, didn't have a gig. He was broke. And Mr. Lepak was like, take it. You need it more than me. And so he had Duke's people call Louis, and the rest is history as we know it, especially when it comes to even revolutionizing the drum set and using 2 bass drums, right?
Right.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was like that Morello clinic. He was like, "Where's Lepak?" So I was kind of, I was in the throes of like heavy hitters when I was little, and it was really due to the fact that my dad was first of all always had my best interests and stood up for me, excuse me, and he also wanted to expose me to the highest quality musicians and people from a young age. I was assigned the flute in band when I was little, and I came home and told him, and he happened to, like, he was booking the elementary school band for gigs too. And he was like, man, if you don't, if you don't let Colleen play the drums, like sayonara to some gigs, man. And he was like, no, I got too many drummers. And he's like, she'll start lessons tomorrow. Come on. And so like, if he
That is
hadn't done
awesome.
that though, yeah, like that's
Huge.
definitely something that I think about, and I'm like, oof, would I have made it as a flute player? I don't know. I would have been a jazz flute player because that's what always spoke to me, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I always knew I was going to be a drummer. I just had it in me. I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. Are you, I just have a couple more questions for you, and then
Yeah.
I'll let you get on with your day. Are you still practicing a lot? Are you able to fit in practicing now with your busy life?
I practicing for myself. Yes. Here's the thing. I was just saying this to my students the other day. I practice anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour a day.
Yeah,
And
okay, cool.
I say that with pride because, our schedules have been absolutely insane. And I think too, it's not only me as a drummer, but I'm, an active clinician. I was just at Michigan State last week. Rodney Whitaker invited me up to be an adjudicator for their regional Essentially Ellington Festival.
Right. I saw that on Instagram. Very cool.
And so that was super, super great. Anything Rodney says, I'm like, absolutely, because any chance I can be in the same zip code, I'm going to say yes to him. And swim in that quarter note if we get a moment or an opportunity. And of course, we're going to do that at Brevard very soon. And, being around the master like that, you're always going to learn something. Just seeing how he treats people. If you want a lesson in kindness, you be around that guy, and so he's given his life to the music and continues to do so, with the utmost class. And so I feel really blessed to even know him and learn from him. And that's really because of Michael Dees. I think, I don't think people thank people enough. And so I every opportunity I can get, I thank a guy like Michael Dees for giving me a chance. When I got this job, he called me and hired me to be the drum set person at Brevard. And Rodney, vouched for me too. After the first year, like they had a couple people and basically had me for 1 week. And then Rodney was like, Michael, Colleen needs to have this gig.
That's awesome.
For both weeks. And I didn't know that, and then Rodney told me. I was like, oh, thanks, man. And so like, I'm so grateful for the both of them. People should be on the lookout. We've got this, he's got a new record coming out in September. Check it out. It's Bill Cunliffe, myself, Katie Thoreau on bass, Gwen Dees, amazing percussionist. Then it's like Rudresh. Sherelle's playing only flute, which is amazing. Matt White, my boss from here, he did some of the arranging as well. Jason Hainsworth, Virginia McDonald, Nanami Haruto, who's she's like a baby Dees, amazing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She's an amazing trombonist, and Dees is playing bari sax on the record. And so it's like, it's all these people that you're like, how is that going to work? And damn, I can't wait to hear it. I haven't heard it yet, but all I know is that session was wild and super fun. And so
you already recorded it, huh?
Yeah, it was last August, so it'll be out in September on Origin.
Okay, cool.
And yes, I practice especially hard when I have things like that coming up.
Right.
So during the school year, I get what I can in, but we are. We started the first, January 5th, week of January 5th. We have not had one weekend off. So,
oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah. Yep. So I look forward to next weekend when school is over.
Right.
And I mean that with love. I love my job so much. And I love my students so much. And my colleagues. Oh, my God. We've got an incredible team at USC, Jazz Studies especially.
Yeah, you seem to be in such a good place right now. And this kind of leads me to what I'll just call my last question.
Okay.
You brought up kind of having a first album out. I think you mentioned it when we were talking about North Texas. Introducing Colleen Clark, I think was the title. Right. And I kind of tracked it down in the corners of the internet. And I'm curious about one of the song titles, Happiness is Fast and Slow.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a tune that you wrote?
Yes, I wrote everything on that record. I wrote.
Oh, okay, awesome. I figured that might be the case, and that title really jumped out at me. And I'm curious if you can tell me where that title came from.
Well, musically speaking, I'm playing in double time, and the cats are playing all half notes. It's pretty interesting, actually.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't played that in a while. And there's like this kind of Brazilian vibe with the counter melodies, like a lot of offbeats and whatnot. And I think really what that means to me is that so many great things could be happening simultaneously. And it's really up to us to pick and choose all of the little victories that we have, because there's victories in every moment. And I think a lot of folks can get caught up in this and that. But if you remember that at the end of the day, that you're just lucky to be here, living, breathing, making music, and that you have the power to make a positive impact, that, I mean, you can do anything. You know what I mean? And so I've just been, we all work so hard, right? We all work so hard to achieve our goals. And I think I'm at a place where I hope that my students can see that anything is possible, that all of our stories are going to be different. None of them are going to be easy, but that anything is possible if you have people in your corner, because sometimes you need people to stand up for you, and there's no shame in that. Yeah, and I am that person for all my kids. Always that person for all my kids. And that sometimes the roles are going to change, and you're going to have to do that for someone. And if you realize that potential and the opportunities that can be created by acting in that manner and by leading from your heart, that you're going to have a really happy life. And so, that's kind of what I mean by that. If that makes sense.
Beautiful. Well, let's leave it there. I think that's a great place, a great note to end on. This has been absolutely awesome. I've loved meeting you. I'll, of course, continue to enjoy following you, and I'll link to all your things in the show notes so people can find you. But if you just want to shout out your Instagram and website real quick, if people don't check the show notes.
Okay, yeah. So I'm at colleendrums.com, and then on Instagram, I'm Colleen Drums. And then if you can't find me there, just type Colleen Drums into Google and something will come up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah. And again, hey, puppy just walked in. If cats have any questions about USC or jazz studies or any of that stuff, please feel free to reach out. The big band will be touring all of the European festivals in the summer. They're headlining. Cool. Yep, they're headlining Savannah Jazz Festival in the spring in the fall with Nicole Zaritis, the person I had mentioned earlier.
Nice.
The Grammy Award-winning Best Vocal Jazz singer. And so, we are just we're busting at the seams. We will be touring all throughout. It's the 100th anniversary of the School of Music at USC.
Oh, cool.
And so we actually have a meeting next week about touring with the groups, and also trying to do some more Jazz Girls Days connected to that tour. So that'll all be posted online and whatnot. And if folks listening, if you want to host a Jazz Girls Day in your community, please feel free to reach out. It's simpler than you think.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for being so open. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Greg. You're awesome. You're very kind. I like you very much.
Well, thank you. And we'll talk again. And hopefully we'll meet in person one day.
Heck yeah. Well, you should. Well, are you far from the Jazz Showcase? That's far.
Well, if you look on a map, zoomed out, no, but Chicago is about
like an 8 hours.
Exactly, you got it. It's about a 7 or 8 hour drive. I can fly there once in a while, but
sure. If you happen to have a plan a vacation for yourself during the time that we're at the Jazz Showcase, let me know. We'll hook you up.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, you have a great weekend. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Craig.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe on your platform of choice and share it with a friend. You can find the show at practicingdrummer.com or on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as Practicing Drummer.